Hello? That'll get your attention. Sorry about that. All right, thanks everyone for coming out tonight. I want to thank our sponsors, AtTask, for providing a place for us to meet and providing food for everybody. O'Reilly for giving us a discount on books. Give a little plug. I'm organizing a Google I/O extended event with Kent Dodds and Aaron Frost. It's going to be June 25th and 26th up at Newmont University. Tickets are $20. That'll get you a hoodie and a t-shirt and lunch for 2 days at the conference. And then we're also going to do some raffles and stuff. We've got some sponsors for that. And also we're looking for one more sponsor. So if your company would like to, let me know. Let's talk afterwards. Anyway, there's only 20. IO-extended. / in between there, yeah. In case you don't know how URLs work. Yeah, Aaron's going to post it on the meetup page so you can get it there as well. So we got 2 talks tonight. The first one is by Kent Dodds. It's called JWT, Not Your Grandmother's Cookies. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, and then Aaron Frost is also going to speak, and his talk is on perf matters with Angular apps. So we'll kick it off with them. And then stick around afterwards. I'm going to do a quick little raffle for a book from O'Reilly, and then you guys can feel free to hang out and talk afterwards as well. So turn it over to Kent.
All right. Let me see. Let me get this on real quick. So, okay, is this on? Like, can people hear me and stuff? All right. Cool. So raise your hand if you know what a jot is. Okay. Wow. Okay. This is great. We're gonna learn some stuff.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone was asking about Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi that's on this floor is not working right now, so you can try to connect to a different one. It's @taskguest, and the password is lowercase workhappy, but it's like on the floor above us, so it's kind of spotty. Good luck, but if you can get on, more power to you.
Yeah, actually, if you can get on, that'd be awesome, because my presentation is like you work through the presentation with me. So, and then at the end, there's like even a form you can fill out and submit feedback, and I'd love your feedback. This is the first time I've given this presentation, so excuse me. You also have to forgive me, my throat is a little sore. Okay, so JSON WebTokens, they are not your grandma's cookies. So first I want to thank a couple of people, Alberto Pose or Pose or Posse. He wrote the original blog post that this presentation is kind of based on. And then I did an implementation that we'll walk through so you can kind of see it in action. And then Rob Wormold, he saved me on IRC one late night when I was banging my head against the wall using cookies. And he's like, dude, use jots. And I was like, what are jots? And he explained it to me. And then everybody else who makes software dev, awesome. Okay, so cookies and jots. There are 2 ways, and these are the 2 that are like the standard ways to do authentication. Cookies, it's a traditional way, and then jots, it's, yeah, I don't know why it's pronounced jot. It's JWT. I used to call it JWT until Derek called it jot, and I was like, oh, jot, okay, I guess that's what it's called. But yes, technically it's pronounced jot. And then they each rely on kind of the same concept. You're sending something to the server to identify who it is that's making the request. So like with every request, you're attaching something onto that request so that the server will know who it is that's making this request. So here, let's zoom in on this just a titch. So this is how it works. Traditional cookie-based authentication, you have like www.yourapp.com or whatever, and the browser posts to /authenticate with the username and password. The server says, let me validate that person is like, that's legit, and he says, hey, browser, set a cookie, and here's the session ID. And then with every request, like the HTTP spec says, send all the cookies with the request. And so that like it'll send the session ID, and then on the server it says, okay, let's deserialize this session. We'll take this ID, hit our data store that like, or our session store that maps a user to the session ID, and then we can like return back whatever it was that they were requesting. So this happens over and over and over and over and over again with every single request. And traditionally, your session store will be a database that like just has your session ID and like the user. So every single time you're making a request, you're hitting that database to deserialize that session. So with the more modern approach, or this newer approach, your server is actually just like a REST base or just serving up JSON. That's all it's doing. It's not responsible for your application, like your static files, your JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. And so you're still posting with the username and password to the server, but instead of returning or telling the browser to set a cookie with a session ID, it's sending back a JSON object that is a token. And this token is a encrypted JSON object. It's the JOT. And so it can have a bunch of things, and there's actually a whole spec for what it should have in it. But for all the times I've used it, it's just like the user ID. And maybe a couple other things, but it's really important that you don't use it to actually store information. It's just to verify like who it is, to verify authentication. But anyway, so it sends back that token, and then the client will store that token in session storage or local storage or a cookie. Don't do a cookie. That's silly. But yeah, you'll store it depending on like how long you want it to hang around. I generally do local storage. And then with every single request, you add an authentication header to the request before it goes down to the server with the bearer and the JWT, or the JOT. And then the server will decrypt that token back into the JSON object using a private key that it knows about. And then if it's legit, then it'll send back the resource. So, have I lost anybody? Any questions before I move on? Yeah.
How does it not need to do yet another one to validate the token? Maybe you said that.
So when I send the token, the server is the one who actually encrypted the token with a private key, and so when I send the token back, it'll decrypt the token using that same private key, and so that's how it's able to deserialize the session. Well, it's not even a session. That's one of the good things about it. But.
So, because it could have gotten load balancing, maybe hitting another server.
Right, but they share it. Yep, exactly. And so that's segues perfectly into this next section. So here are some of the benefits of JOTs over cookies. Is that very thing, that's the stateless, number 2 here, is with cookies, you have to have some sort of central session store so that, like with load balancing, for example, if one server sets the cookie, you have to make sure that the server that's receiving the request later is hitting the same session store. And so load balancing is a little bit of a challenge. And so the statelessness, like with JOTs, it's really easy because it can be any server. As long as they share the same private key, it doesn't matter where you're going to. And there doesn't need to be any sort of session store anywhere because it's totally stateless. And then back up here to enabling cores, we're going to see why this is awesome in the demo. But basically, you see up here you have app.yourapp.com and app.yourapp.com on the cookie. And then here on JOTs, you can do api.yourapp. And so with cookies, that's not possible. You can't set a cookie on another subdomain. And this is what killed me when I was banging my head against the wall. So luckily I survived, thanks to Robert. So then another thing that gives you is you can CDNify all of your site's assets. So because your assets of your website are now just static assets that are not actually being served up by your server, and they don't need to be with JOTs, you can serve those up just from a CDN or from GitHub Pages, all of our favorite CDN. So then it's also mobile ready, because this is you need to have just a JSON API for mobile that you can hit, and you need authentication works fantastically with that. It also protects against cross-site request forgery, which is like this iframe thing, and then you gotta like worry about all this crazy stuff. We're not gonna talk about that, but it's nice that way. And then performance. Obviously, every single time you make a request, you have to hit the database to deserialize this session. But with JOTS, you don't have to do that. You just have to decrypt your JOT. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So the way that you do that, like with cookies, like cookies can expire, and like that's kind of built in. With your tokens, you can say on the server, or like even inside of your JOT, you can say this expires at this time, and then when it's deserialized, you can look at the expiring date and say, has this expired? It has. Then say, no, like 403, you can't get in, re-authenticate.
What about if you want to like deauthorize someone, like so that their key no longer works?
Right, that's what you do. So like there are a lot of different ways that you could go about this, and some of that could be logic on the client side. It just kind of depends on your specific use case. But yeah, like your server could say, hey, I'm changing my private key, and so now everybody is screwed. And so if you're not like,
Is there any way to get around invalidating everyone's stuff?
oh yeah, you could like it. We'll get into this demo, and maybe you'll see like a solution for what you're trying to accomplish. Speaking of the demo, so if you are on Wi-Fi, then you can do this and follow along here. Is anybody on Wi-Fi? You can raise your hand. Okay. If anybody who wants to actually follow along, or should I just like keep moving? Because I can wait here for a sec. Okay, so I'm not going to wait here for a sec. I'm going to keep moving. Okay, so we'll just do this. Actually, forget that. We'll just do this. Okay. So we're going to check out the cookie branch, and we're going to CD into our API. Here, let's subble this directory so you can see all the cool things that are in here. And obviously, I care about you guys and your eyes. Okay, so here we have a very basic server. Actually, let's just look at the app so you can get some context here. So we're going to node index here. We're going to localhost 3000. Okay, here's our simple app. So I have this, our database here lives inside of, oh, whoops. Here, let me do this really quick. Don't want that one, I want this one. Okay, so our database lives inside this JSON object. So here's the username and password. Actually, it lives in, here, let's just delete that. So username can't see Dodds, and password is I like Twix. Oh, whoops, I don't. I like Twix. Oh, I think I need to restart the server. Okay, bam. Okay, so very simple, just to illustrate what's going on. So this information, this is that's protected, a protected resource. You have to be authenticated to get that, and this is protected as well. So each one of these, and this is like a random pictures that the server will give us if we're authenticated. So let's look at the server here really quick. So this is just our basic cookie authentication, so using Express. And so we have our cookie parser here and our session here, and we're saying, hey, let's set up our database. This is just like what the username and password and these protected assets or this protected resource. And we set up the Express app. We use the cookie parser and the session with the session ID and a crazy secret. And then we're going to use the body parser for some other stuff. And then we're just using Passport. If you don't use Passport for your authentication and you're on Express, I highly recommend you look into it. I don't know what you're using, but this is easier. So Passport's great. So, and Passport works great with sessions, and so it will take care of the hitting the session store and deserializing your session ID. All of that stuff is hidden under the covers between the cookie parser and the session module and Passport. So, and then we're going to say, hey, we're going to serve up the whole app from the server because we're old school and doing it like this. So everything inside of our front end will be like static assets that you can access. So if I go angular.js, bam, there's Angular. Oh, whoops. There we go. OK, and so then I'm setting up some routes for login, log out. You don't really need to know or care much about this. It's just that we're using Passport's local authentication and just double checking here if the username provided and the password provided match the user that's in our database, quote unquote. OK, and then we have a protected resource here that's users/me, where we double check, hey, is there a user on the request? This is something that Passport does it for us. It'll attach a user to the request. And if there is a user on that request, then we'll just send the user object, which is up here. We'll send that back as JSON. And so that's where we are getting this protected information. And then otherwise, we're going to just say, hey, not authorized, bro. So actually, let's go ahead and log out, and we'll see that. Sorry, 1 second. Not authorized. OK, you had a question? So you have to do node index.js, and then you go to localhost 3000. Oh, sorry, you had to get checkout cookie. Yeah. OK, so I like Twix. I do, by the way, so if anybody wants to give me a Twix. OK, so then we've got this get funny pick, and that's what this is. So every single time we're going to get a different funny pick, and all of these are really hilarious. And that's also a protected resource. So we're double checking, is the user on here? If it is, then send the funny pick file. And so we don't have a whole lot of time to look into the Angular. Well, here, let's look into the Angular really quick. But it's a big mess of wonderful Angular. But basically, it's just controlling lots of the UI stuff. All you really need to know is we're saying, hey, our API base is localhost 3000. And so then we're injecting that into our controller here. And when this controller first gets initialized, then we're going to get me, and we'll hit the API base user/me to get this information. And then every single time I click on the funny picture, it's going to toggle that and set the funny picture URL to the API base/funnypic, which loads into this image tag. And that's because our server is serving up a different one every single time. That's why we get a different one every time I click this. So, all right, yeah.
So you were saying in the intro the httpInterceptor you used to grab?
Yeah, so sorry, right now what we're doing is cookies. So I'm just demonstrating this can be done with cookies. So with the 7 minutes and 45 seconds I got left, we're going to go ahead and see why will this not work at really, well, obviously cookies do work at scale. Lots of people do it. But why is this a bit of a pain? So let's go ahead and get back here. We're going to see why cookies are a pain. So we're going to check out cookie pane. We're going to stop the server first, check out cookie pane. And then, so basically now what we're trying to do is we're saying, OK, I want a little bit more sanity. I want to have my services separate from my static assets, because I want my static assets to be on a CDN, so they're blazing fast, and just have my server doing its one thing, which is serving up these funny pictures that I want to see so bad. So that's all we've done. Is this front end is now not inside the API folder. It's now outside of the API folder. And in here, the instructions. So like you guys, I've already posted these slides to the meetup, so you can go look at this later. But you need to set up your Etsy host file to like simulate separate domains, right? So I've already done that. I have an API jotforthewin.dev and a www. So that's my website, and this is my JSON API. So first things first, we're going to node our API folder. So now we're serving up that API in port 3000, and then we're going to HTTP server our front end. So in another tab. So now I've got 2 servers going at once, and then let's just look at our script here. It is now changed. Now the API, the only thing that's changed in here is the API base is now api.jotforthewin.dev 3000. So, and that's where we're serving this thing up, and because my Etsy host file is set up, that will work. So let's, where I'm serving up my actual website now is not localhost 3000, but it's now www.jwtforthewin8080. So now, bam, everything's working. This is awesome. Let's go ahead and log in. Can't see Dodds. I like Twix. Oh, there was a problem logging in, and we're sorry. So let's see. Oh, we've got, oh, access control, allow origin. Right, yeah, this is cores. No big deal. Just a quick Stack Overflow search, and you know exactly what to do. So we're going to, oh man, cores. We'll check out the cookie pane cores, and we'll see what we're going to do to fix this issue. So if we open up our index, we added this little bit of logic here. So if you're not familiar with cores, get familiar. You will eventually, even if you don't want to. So now, like, we have cores set up, enabled, so no big deal. Let's restart this server. And just for the sake of being careful, we'll refresh and can't see Dodds. I like Twix. All right, everything's looking good. So if I get my funny pic, oh, crap, what's that? Well, maybe if I refresh the page, oh gosh, no, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh, dang it. Oh, responded with a status 403 forbidden. So that's what happens when I'm not authenticated, but I just authenticated. So this shouldn't be happening. So let's look at this. Ah, man, this is so lame. So the reason is because cookies, servers can't set cookies on other domains. That's I don't know why that exists, but that's a thing. And so like when you actually try to do this and get all the gains of having things separate, you're not going to be able to. And then you have to deal with like load balance issues and different things. And so now we're going to talk about JWT and why that's so great. So we're going to stop our server, check out master, and I'm pretty sure I've already installed all of my stuff, hopefully. So we'll git check out master, and we're going to node the API. OK. So if I refresh, now everything has changed. Let's double check that it works. OK, we'll refresh. Oh, man, I'm loving it. OK, and yep, special delivery and probiotics. I had some probiotics yesterday. It's delicious. OK, so yeah, everything's working. That's awesome. So let's see what magic is doing this in the next 2.5 minutes I got. So we are no longer using the cookie parser or session because those are not needed anymore. Now we're using a module called Express JWT, or JOT. And the cool thing about JOT is because it's a standard, if you're using PHP, not only am I sorry for you, but there's also a library for you to do that, to do JOTs. And then we're also doing this JSON WebToken module that will help us to encrypt our JOTs. So let's scroll down here a little bit. We're going to set up our JOT here. Our super secret code, you'd want this to not be coded, hard-coded into your application. It's just forewarning you. What you'd actually want to do is something more like this, and then set that up on your environment, right? But I don't want to do that for this demo, so I'm hard coding it. Don't tell anybody. So we have this jot super secret code, and we're initializing the express jot with that secret. And so now we have this validate jot, which is a function that we invoke with the request, the response, and the next. So it's a middleware. And so we're saying, hey, app.use with every single request, regardless of like anything. And you can customize this all you want. But we're saying with every request, we're going to first double check that it's not /login because people are obviously not going to have a jot when they're logging in the first place. And so if it is login, then we'll just let them move on. Otherwise, we're going to, oh yeah, so one other thing that we probably won't get to in 40 seconds, but well, here, let's get to it real quick. So when you're requesting images, sorry, what? Thanks, Aaron. Okay, so when you're requesting, or when you are putting the source, when you're putting the source on an image tag, you can't like intercept that request. That's like a browser thing, right? And so you can't say, hey, request, I'm going to give you this authentication header, because that just doesn't work. You can't do that. And so what we're doing here is we're saying, hey, I'm going to add a, oh, that's my timeout. Thanks, bro. I'm going to add a access token here. Let's zoom in on that just a titch. I'm going to add an access token query parameter on here that has the token. And so that's why I'm checking in here for the request query, is if it has an access token, then I'm just going to, on the server side, attach that to the authorization header before I validate the jot. Okay? Hopefully that's at least as clear as mud. And otherwise, like all of the other requests that I'm making, I'm going to intercept, and we'll see how you do that with Angular here in just a sec. Okay, so then we're doing our CORS thing, we're doing our passport thing. None of this really has had to change. One thing that has changed is we're no longer saying app.use passport.session because we don't need passport session magic. The poor guy, he spent all that time working on this session thing, and I'm not even using it. Okay, and so then here's the first thing that's changed. We have now on our login, we're still using passport to authenticate, but when we actually log in the request, we're going to, instead of just like, actually I don't even remember what used to happen here. I should have shown you, but instead of doing what we used to do, we're going to actually return a token as well as the user object, because if you're logging in, then I know that you're legit and you can have the user object, but we're going to just send the token with using that jot module that I have where we sign it with that super secret code that I showed you before. And I'm not doing IDs with my little JSON database, so the serialized version of a user is just their username. And so then, well, there's some magic with Passport, but like you don't need to see that right now. So anyway, that's basically what's happening when they log in, is I send that token back, and then we'll see what Angular is doing on the other side. And then from here on out, oh, actually I do want to show you that passport stuff. Let's see, passport. Yeah, so when, oh yeah, so here's where I'm checking. Passport saying, hey, whenever I need to deserialize a user, I'm going to give you a username and a done function, just in case you need to hit a server for some crazy reason. And so I'm going to double check that my database user right here, its username is the same as the username it gives me, and then I'll return done with that user. And so that's how I get the user up here with this authenticate. And then Passport will take care of attaching the user to the, actually no, it's not Passport, it's the express jot. We'll take care of adding the user to the request object. Sorry. Okay, hopefully that wasn't really super confusing. I think it may have been. Okay, so now when I do user/me, this is all working the same. I didn't have to do anything special for jots. And same thing goes with my funny pick. I didn't have to do anything special with JOTs. So like if you're in a situation where you have cookies and you want to convert over to JOTs, it's actually really easy. I had that same situation. I had 6,000 lines of Node and was going to go mobile and found out that I was screwed. And then Ryan saved me, and I switched over to JOTs in like an hour. It was like really easy. So, okay, now let's look at the Angular, because we're at an Angular meetup. So there are a couple extra things you have to do, because like with cookies, it's baked in. We're going to send the cookies every single time. With Angular or with JOTs, you have to kind of do that yourself. And so you have this, well, okay, so I've got this service that is called auth token that takes care of setting the token in local storage, getting it out, clearing it, all of this stuff. And it basically is just an abstraction on top of local storage. So you have your window local storage here. So that's all nice and dandy. And then you also need to make a auth interceptor. And if you're not familiar with interceptors in Angular, they're a thing, and you can use them. It's basically, it's just a service, and it has a request and a response, and there's actually like a request error and response error that you can add on to this as well. And that's just like your interface for what an interceptor is. And then in the config, where's the config? Oh, here we go, at the bottom. So when you configure your application, you pass in the HTTP provider, and you push an interceptor. And you can push as many of these as you want. So I have an app right now. I have 2 interceptors, one for this and another because for some reason my backend guy likes to do snake case, and I hate snake case. So I have an interceptor to change everything from snake case to camel and then back. Yeah. Don't take it from the man. Be the man. So the request takes a config, and I say, hey, auth token thing this service that I created, get the token, and if there is a token, then let's double check that headers exist, and if they don't, then make them. And we're going to add an authorization header with the bearer and the token right there, and then we just return the config. And then your response, I don't think I even need a response here because I'm not really doing anything with it, but that's how simple it is. And then all of your requests that you make, and it's actually, if you worry about security, these interceptors will only happen if it's going to the same domain, it'll go across subdomains, but so you're not actually going to end up sending your authentication header to like Google Analytics or something, because if somebody got a hold of this user's token, then they can make all kinds of requests and stuff. But same story with cookies. So anyway, so that's what's happening here. And I'm getting a phone call. Maybe it's Aaron. Just kidding. Okay, and I think that's I'm pretty sure that's it. And then I'm adding this access token to the funny picture URL. And yeah, that's all that's happening for this funny picture to work. So that's it.
So back to the question that was answered earlier, it's still not really clear to me how you would just arbitrarily invalidate somebody's token.
Yeah. So so the server can't just go say, hey, client, when you're not even logged in or anything, go delete that local storage token thing, right? But on the server side, you could implement something that says, as part of your JOT, you could say, where do I make my JOT? There we go. So as part of my JOT, I could say expires, and then some date, or so you can't clear the cookie or the token externally. But I'm pretty sure you can't really do that with cookies either, unless the user is on your site.
So as a use case, right? With what we do at Vivint, we have home security, and if I lose my device or somebody steals my computer, I want to be able to just say log me out on any device, and that's a button in our app.
Mm-hmm.
And all it does is we call an API, and it literally just deletes their session out of our database, or all of their sessions types their username.
Mm-hmm.
So the next time they try to authenticate, it just fails, or it fails without them having to log in again.
Yeah, that's a great use case, and it makes me sad because with that kind of use case, what you'd have to do is have some sort of database that keeps track of that. So you lose the win of not having to hit the database every time, but that's okay because it's still stateless, sort of, and so that's nice. Yeah. So good. Yeah. Totally legit use case. Yeah.
So I'm not sure on all the technical details, but I know for a service we have that you have to request an initial token, and you have some secret key or whatever you provide when you get that token back. If we would want to revoke them, we simply would deny them that ability to get the token at that point before they can make further API calls. I don't know if that fits in with, with you, you've got the token generated. Where does yours get generated?
Right here. So this JWT or jot module dot sign.
Okay, so as they log in, they get that generated?
Yep. Yeah. So I've already encroached on Aaron's time, like 10 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and step down. But if you have questions or anything, feel free to contact me. And this submit feedback at the bottom here, this actually works. So you can actually submit feedback. And if you're like, give me a 3, then I say, ouch, that hurt. Please give me some actual, like, some legit feedback for why you think I did so poorly. But if you give me a 10, then I'll be like, wow, sweet, bro. Tell me why I did so great. So anyway, this actually works online. You don't have to have this installed or like downloaded or anything. So if you go to the slides, you can go do this. So anyway, thank you very much.
You guys see that? Is that visible? Is that okay? Okay. Is that visible? Is this code good? Guys in the back, can you see that? Who said that? Okay. Is it because you're in the back? Okay. All right, is this bloody thing on? Yeah, guys in the back in here? Okay. So does anyone have a performance talk that they've known about for more than a day that they want to present instead of this? So, yeah, so I guess there was a cancellation last night, Matt. So I'm going to ask, before you like tell everyone how bad this sucked, that you temper your feedback through like a shield of patience because it was prepared with less than 24 hours. It's something I've thought about, though, and it's something I've had to deal with. I work at a company called Domo, and we do some stuff that gets a little bit performance intensive. And sometimes our events need to be super fast, and they're not. And anyone here who's used Angular for more than 2 seconds is going to be in this situation where there's an event that you wanted to be faster than it was. Because Angular's like beautiful thing that it does. It's like the best, worst thing ever. And it's the digest, right? Where it does all the dirty checking to watch and make sure that all of our data is bound 2 ways, right? So this is like a really, really powerful thing, and it allows us to get a lot of stuff built very quickly. And then when you're done, you turn around to stand it up and have your QA team test it, and like, you're at 300 milliseconds a frame, and that sucks really bad. So having dealt with a few of these, I was like, well, maybe I'll prepare a talk for this. So I'll tell Matt that I've got something I could do in a few months. So this is this was something that was going to take a few months to get ready. So please forgive the crudeness, but it is applicable. It's some of the stuff that I've learned, and it's something that until you really hit your head on the wall with the digest in Angular and with the compile functions, you're not really going to understand it. So I wanted to go through a few things, and I'm going to put some light reading out there, just to kind of talk a little bit more. It's kind of a longer read. It's something I put up on my LinkedIn. And it's called Jailbreaking Angular Apps, and it talks about sometimes you need to do stuff outside of Angular don't always depend on Angular to do stuff for you. And it explains why, because that's kind of like everyone here just was like, wait a minute, jQuery handlers? And so I explain why though. And so that's some light reading. If you Google it, it might show up, but I doubt it. So you might have to go to my LinkedIn. But anyways, it's there. It's a public post, so anyone can read it. So what I talk about in this post, I built something a little bit like this. It was a task board where there was columns of tasks. Tasks had descriptions and like random people. It's not random people. I mean, like it was like there was some order to who was assigned to it, but just a variable amount of people assigned to it, and you needed to be able to click one and drag it and drop it somewhere else and like have the order preserved and everything, right? And a feature, I built it and it was super fast, and then I realized there was a feature that I was missing that's like super critical in drag and drop. It's super critical not for a developer but for a user. When you're dragging, and I didn't get this built all the way in, so you're not going to be able to see the drag and drop working right now, and I apologize. I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what the UI was looking a little bit like, what I was dealing with. And when you're dragging, you need to be able to show the user a drop zone, right? So that they understand when my finger goes up off of the mouse, what will happen? Where is this thing going? If you don't give them a drop zone and they drop it on, like you're forcing them to drop it on something, there's some confusion whether it's going to go above it, below it, or replace it. You know what I'm saying? And so the drop zone was like a huge piece of feedback we got from our users. I was like, okay, I need to add a drop zone. So as I was dragging, I was like, okay, I need to find the closest task to the one I'm dragging, the closest task to my mouse, and I need to put a drop zone either before or after it, depending on whether I'm on the first half of the task or on the bottom half of the task. So I wired up my ng mouse move, right? I was like, let's get this ng mouse move working, because I'm gonna like exercise my spirit in this ng mouse move. Because every time the mouse moves a pixel, I'm now gonna need to go, okay, where is everybody? How close are you to my mouse? And whatever the closest one is, am I on the top half of you or the bottom half? So when there was 2 or 3 things on the screen, 2 or 3 tasks, it was fairly quick. It was still about 60 milliseconds per pixel, which is horrible, needless to say. When you're moving your mouse around and that drop zone's janking like crazy, it's a really bad experience. And when there was hundreds of things on the screen, like what we have here, I mean, it was like 400 milliseconds per mouse move. So I was getting maybe 2, maybe 3 a second. So needless to say, it looked like I was in slow motion. And I was like, well, this sucks. So what's the first thing that you guys would do, or the Stack Overflow would tell you to do? What? Draggable using jQuery UI? Right, like add 300 kilobytes to your download? Right, like that's one thing you could do, but I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I was too crazy. So what else would you guys do? You'd broadcast it? Okay. So you debounce a little bit, right? Okay. So I was like, I'm going to debounce. I'm going to make it not run every single time, right? And a debounce is a great idea. Does anyone else use Lodash? So you just have like a built-in debounce utility, right? So debounce is great, except for when you debounce with an Angular handler, the Angular handler is still called. Your Lodash method won't get called, but every time the debounce. But your method to find the thing usually wasn't the slow part. It was usually the scope digest that was the hard thing. So even though you debounce your method, the digest is happening every single pixel move, even though you debounce the handler inside of the method. Because it's inside of an Angular handler, it still did a scope digest. So I'm moving around the screen, and so I make all these changes, and I get debounce going, and it's like I'm still at the exact same pixels, or frames per second. And I'm like, how in the hell did that just happen if I just made so many changes? And I realized that being inside Angular killed me. And there's certain events that should not be inside Angular. And anyone who wires up these events inside Angular, you need to think twice. I almost said shoot yourself in the head, but think twice. I backed off a little bit off of the initial commit on that. Just think again before you release that out to production. If you're doing an Angular handler on a mouse move, mouse enters, depending on how many things it may enter, leaves, key downs, key ups, key presses, especially if you're doing all three on the same bloody element, kill yourself. But there's any scroll events. I think they took ng scroll out because they're like, this is the worst idea possible. So let's definitely not let anyone do an ng scroll. They have to make their own if they want to do ng scroll. So if you're doing any of that, maybe put it into a directive that that Angular isn't going to be able to touch. And in your directive, it's a jQuery handler, and when it decides maybe it's time to make a reaction, then it can go ahead and call a scope apply, but it doesn't have to scope apply every single time before it even checks to see if something needs to happen. Anyway, so again, due to time constraints, I wasn't able to whip up epic examples here. But I whipped up some examples of things I think catch most of us. And when you're first learning Angular, and even when you're like mid-level Angular, and you're just into like, banging out the UI, and you need everything to just happen real quick because there's a timeline, and you're not in your craft thinking about performance, it's really easy to kill yourself with some of these things. So I just brought up a few of them, and I want to go over them with everyone. So one of them I already talked about, and that's the traditional. Oh, come on, dude. Really loaded, nice. Come on, man. Shut up. Is there any reason why the presenter Wi-Fi's like teats up? I don't know. Because the @task one's gone too. Yeah. Well, my phone's freaking out about it.
Whoever's on it, get off.
Yeah. Who's on Corp IT 2?
Use Tyler Hotspot.
I'm going to use Tyler Hotspot, guys.
Changing my password next meeting.
NG repeat, bro. Good job.
Nobody heard that.
Yeah.
Get off my Wi-Fi.
Get off the Wi-Fi. So, come on, man. You can do it. Okay. So here we go. So this is what a lot of us will do. We'll put our ng mouse move on. Can you guys see that? Let me move. Is that better? Like this? Dudes in the back, we're good? Okay. Is that better? Everyone in the back can see? Okay. So, do mouse move event. Whenever you move over this 1,000 by 1,000 block. And again, this is crude, right? But maybe you're trying to do a mouse move tracker. So a lot of us were like, hey, initially, let's just have this scope event, and it's going to debounce at 200 milliseconds, right? So what this means is, Angular is going to call this event every single time. But Lodash isn't going to call this anonymous function. It's only going to call it once every 200 milliseconds. So every single pixel, Angular is going to come in, do a scope digest, but only every 200 milliseconds is actually going to do the Lodash event. But every single pixel, you're actually going to get a digest, which means you're going to be super, super slow. And I wanted to kind of show that off. So I wired that up over here. Hold on, let me come back over here and we'll show it to you. Yeah, so I did a mouse over on these tasks, on each of the task items, and all I did in there was I stored the last time I moved over it, or I did a mouse move, and now I'm storing this time, and I'm just gonna log the duration, and that's it. Like this controller otherwise is empty, so it's a fairly bare bones controller UI here. And I wanted to show everyone how sad it can get, right? Because it takes a really long time. So that one was the network. Don't freak out. Don't like go to Ember, right? Okay. So you can see, and all I'm going to do is move over these things. So 102, how many frames per second is that? Is that 10 frames per second? 136, and now I'm at like what, 8? Maybe 7? Anyway, super, super janky. None of these except like just randomly are in the 16 milliseconds that it takes to get a 60 frame per second app. So even with a super simple handler like that, and all I'm doing, I'm debouncing at 200 milliseconds, so only every 200 milliseconds will actually do this console log. Yeah, it's super sad, right? Like, no, that's not it. So a console log, every single time it gets done with the next digest, it will then do the next one. And so you say this is super slow. So again, this is a controller that has not a lot going on with it. There's some bindings going on, and when I say not a lot, I mean it's fairly simple, except I've got a directive that's repeated like 400 times. So if you're on a screen with like 400 directives and several controllers, every single digest, like every single one, you need to think out if you care about performance. If you don't care about performance, and sometimes it's okay not to care about performance, like a click handler, if that takes an extra 100 milliseconds, like your user probably won't see that. But if it's on like these key press events, I mean, if you're typing in a box and it's like gunk, and then it like refreshes, it's really, everyone's going to see it, including you, and it's going to look really bad for your stuff. So that was the first thing I wanted to talk about was these debounces. And so I wanted to show how you would do it, a better debounce. So over here, I added a new controller called Test Controller Move Handler. And I passed the scope event I wanted to do. And then I just added a new directive called Test Controller Move Handler. And all it does is it fires up a jQuery handler. And this jQuery handler is going to fire every single time I move my mouse around the screen, right? It's not going to do the scope digest, so it should happen in 0 to 1 milliseconds, okay? So it should be super fast. And then this handler can check to see if something is true, then we'll go ahead and we'll do a scope eval on whatever method you passed in, okay? So like that's how you would wire up a faster handler, something that you want outside of, you want to jailbreak Angular's listeners, because it's one of those events that's a sensitive event. This is how you could do it, and this is a super simple handler to wire up. Does anyone have any questions about what I did here? Is this all pretty clear? Yeah. There's like 10 lines of code. I'm not using either, but yeah. So element.on, yeah, I mean any Angular element, and this is an Angular element, has the light on in there. So if you have jQuery on your page, jQuery or Angular just defaults to jQuery's handler. Otherwise, that is a jQuery light. So, but that syntax is good for JQLite or jQuery. So.
Wait, so why was the other handler triggering the digest every time? Is that just the ng mouse move directive? That's just the properties of it?
So every ng event, so like this ng mouse move,
Yeah, so it calls that function.
so it will call this function every time, right? Lodash is going to ignore this, except for every 200 milliseconds it will fire at one time, right? But even though Lodash is ignoring it, because it's inside of an Angular world, Angular's still going to do a digest after. So this is going to return a function, right? This is going to return an actual function, this debounce call. And Angular's going to call it every single time, and then it's going to do a scope apply, which is going to force a digest. Okay? So even though the function's not going to do anything only once every 200 milliseconds, Angular's still going to call a scope apply after it calls it. So Angular's doing an apply every single time it calls, even though the Lodash event only fires once every 200 milliseconds. Angular's still firing every single time it comes in here. Does that make sense? I'm trying to explain it how it's in my head. hopefully it's making it. Is anyone else get? We're good. Okay, my man, Jared. Not really. Did you say Angular's not very pretty? No. Okay, cool. Just checking.
But there are some things where I have to tell it to scope apply, otherwise it doesn't do it.
So the times you have to tell Angular's scope apply is if you have an event start outside of Angular, maybe it's a jQuery Ajax handler, but it's not like it's not Angular's jQuery handler, or maybe it's like some WebSocket library you're using, or you've wired up some kind of non-Angular handler, right? Then whenever that reacts and does something to your models, Angular doesn't care because it wasn't inside the Angular world. You have to actually tell it to apply, which is what I was doing in this new debounce here. Is I'm wiring up with jQuery, and then I say when something happens that I care about, then you can do a scope eval, which we'll call this method, and the scope eval will automatically do an apply when it's done. Does that make sense? Okay, any more questions? I'll move on. Okay, I'm going to move on because I'm running out of time. Okay, so traditional watches, everyone does this. You're like, well, I want to wait till the item is on my scope in my directive, right? And when it's there, you know, if it's not undefined, do something really cool with that new item, right? How many of us treat Angular like we treated handlebars, though? Like, and by that I mean you use it to initially template your screen. However, very rarely is it going to go ahead and update the DOM subsequently. Like, how many of us use it like that? I think a lot of us do. And when you sit down and think about it, you're like, holy crap, most of what's on the DOM, I'm not going to like, there's no like WebSockets firing that's going to change it every few seconds. Like, I could probably paint it once and be done. So when we watch it, this watch is there, even though we only needed that initial watch, it's going to be there all the time. Every time it does a digest, it's just going, did the item change? And the item's not going to change. So if we have 100 directives on our screen, the digest now has to go, it has to save a copy of the old item so that when it checks the current item, it says, is it the same as the old one? Yeah, it is. Okay, cool. Is it the same as the old one? So it has to save a copy of the old one. Like it gets a lot of overhead. And there's this very simple way to tell it to stop watching it to get your performance back. So if you have like hundreds of these things, like on this page over here, I had 400 of these tasks. And when it templated this out here, I didn't need it to watch anymore. Like I didn't need it to look for those things anymore. So one thing you can do with your new watch is when you do a watch like this, it returns a function that you can call to make the watch stop, an unwatch function. So you should be storing out your unwatches for these things that you don't care about. And then when the cool thing happens that you care about, tell it to unwatch the item. So this way your scope's going to speed up, especially if you have hundreds of these things on your screen. So save your unwatches and unwatch when you can. That's another thing I wanted to show. NG class, I wanted to show a bad one. Wait, what the hell? Where's that blot at HTML? So epic. Hold on, let's go. It'll be in here. Sorry, guys. NG class better. Edit. Really? Hold on. NG class. Hold on. Let me go to my gist and we'll find the NG class one. Okay. Don't look at that because that's the answer. Okay. Okay. So this is what we do. And can you guys see that? Let me make it a little bit bigger. Okay. So we have this UI here, and like on the item, we'll say NG class hovered if the item is item.hovered, right? So now there's a watcher on the item, every single item. So if we have hundreds of these things, there's a watcher on each of those. And if hovered ever switches, it'll add the second class to the item, right? And then we say, well, the items are black background or white background with black color, but if it's ever has the hovered class, switch it to black background with white. I mean, and this is a stupid example, but I mean, we do these things every day in our apps, right? Well, I think this is a crappy example of using Angular. You shouldn't do with Angular what you can do with CSS. So that's the next thing I want to say for performance. Anything that you can get with CSS, if you're doing it with Angular just because you can, then I posit you're doing it wrong. So the way you would do it right is here, and you would just use the pseudo class on hover to switch it for you. So take it out of Angular land. You're going to save all your watches. It's going to be accelerated. It's going to be on a different processor because you did it with CSS anyway, so it's going to be way faster. The next thing is ng-show and ng-hide. And I think this is the one that I think this is the one where if you're not guilty of the ng class one, all y'all are guilty of this one. Okay? and I'm part of all y'all, right? So I think that we do this, like we have some big section of the DOM, right? And we say, well, if it's in archive mode, show the archive icon, right? But if it's in archive mode, hide the active icon. And then, so when it's in active mode, it hides the archive. So all you're trying to do is get it to show different icons. And then you do the same thing down here where you have a text area where if it's not in archive mode, it's a text area that they can type in. But if it is archive mode, then it's just a span that they can view. And down here, the buttons, if it's archive mode, you'd have an unarchived button, whereas if it's not archive mode, you'd have a save button. So we put all these ng shows and hides on the DOM, right? And again, I'm saying this is not okay to do, right? When you have an ng show and hide, when you have dozens of these things, and some of us have hundreds, like let's not joke yourself. When you think about it, you realize, oh, I have 100 of these bloody things. You could do this whole thing with CSS. And maybe it's just because we don't know CSS well enough, but if we were to just put an archive mode class on the whole section, so we only have one listener now, we could say if big section is not in archive mode, and I have the show archive mode class, show when archive mode, then display none, right? So if it's not archive mode and show in archive mode, you'd hide it. And if it's hide when archive mode and it's not archive mode, then you display normal, right? And likewise, if archive mode is on, then you would do the show archive mode is normal and the hide archive mode is display. And then you just come down here and you decorate it with those classes instead, right? So we just show those classes on the things we want to show and hide. And that, all of a sudden, you only have one watch versus dozens or hundreds like some of us have. And so you should not be using Angular like you use handlebars is what I'm saying. You should be using Angular for what Angular is meant to be used for, and you should be using CSS for what it's meant to be used for. And if you're mixing those two things, it's okay. You still come and meet up, right? But don't go like teach your team to do it. Like think about it a few more minutes and you're like, this was lazy. I just didn't want to switch over to the CSS file. So I did it with ng-show hide. And it's okay. I mean, we've all done it. Like the only way I was able to write this was because I did it like dozens of times, right? Like, so I'm not trying to finger wag. A couple other things like I kind of want to point out because I'm out of time is if you're stuck on pre-Angular 1.3, so you can't upgrade to 1.3, and some of us will be on 1.2 for a really long time. There's some directives I found on this Stack Overflow post where they're giving you some bind once stuff, so it will bind stuff in your UI so that you can use Angular to kind of template out the UI without having it watch those values. And so I found those directives to be super useful. But a better option is if you can go to 1.3. Igor pushed this a few weeks ago, and when I saw this commit, I was super excited. If your expression starts with : like and then the name, like so : foo, it would only bind foo to that one time with no watches, like no subsequent updates. So you can get your performance back and still use Angular to template it in. Super sweet, right?
This is post 1.3.
This is starting at 1.3.
That doesn't work. Does that work in handlebars? Like when you have code brackets
Handlebars you have to tell handlebars to render manually, whereas Angular re-renders like every time.
When you use the Angular code brackets. Like can you use that? Yeah, look.
Yeah, yo, yeah, sorry, dude, sorry. So like this right here, like if you wanted to put the name inside of this li, yeah, you just say item not name. Because you do need to put the name in the UI, and like there's no other better way to do it, right? Like you're not gonna bust out Lodash templates just or handlebars just to do that, right? So a lot of this some of this performance stuff we haven't been able to enhance, even though some of us understand. I'm never gonna update the name. Like the name's gonna be the name until the screen goes away and it comes back. It will probably still be the same thing, but I don't need to update it in this session of the view. And now you're going to be able to control that and get that performance back. There's going to be no more watches. The digest will be able to go way faster because you just say : now the expression name, and it won't watch it multiple times. And then again, jailbreaking your Angular apps by me. If anyone wants to see this code, it's on my GitHub. Aaron Frost, ng perf demo 1, and in the perf slides are all the links that I just showed you guys. So yeah. Any other questions before I'm done? Pretty simple. Sorry that was so crude, but I felt like there was a lot of stuff we could glean from that. Anyway, thanks guys.